у Харкові, як і фестиваль DocuDays. Мене звати Оксана Сигарева, я кураторка лабораторії. Поруч зі мною Марія Степанюк, яка є координаторкою.
Ми дуже раді, що саме DocuDays доєднався до її реалізації, як місце сили документалістів країни. Саме для них ми створили цю лабораторію, але насправді вона буде доречна спеціалістам з різних сфер.
Лабораторія пропонує 6 кроків зі створення VR-фільмів, від розробки історії до промоції та дистрибуції. Для цього ми запросили 6 спеціалістів прочитати лекції на прикладах з їх практики. Головна задача лабораторії – розширити інструментарій документального кіно через залучення можливостей віртуальної реальності.
Ми сподіваємось, що послухавши всі лекції, вам буде легше йти на територію VR, і після лабораторії з'явиться більше історій мовою віртуальної реальності.
Сьогодні ви почуєте Фелікса Гедтке, креативного продюсера та співзасновника імерсивної сторітелінгової студії Naohia Media, що працює з VR та AR методами оповіді. В своїй лекції «Бюджет та план фінансування VR-проєкту» Фелікс поділиться досвідом створення VR-фільмів, від дослідження до міжнародних кінофестивалів, розкриє бізнесовий бік процесу створення VR-фільму.
Студія Naohia Media створює новий медіапростір для голосів меншин, які мало представлені в нагальних дискурсах, і має на меті передати різні реальності з усього світу. Протягом лекції ви можете ставити питання в чатах, у нас буде час розібрати їх в кінці лекції, а ті, хто присутні в Zoom, матимуть можливість задати питання наживо. Вітаємо Фелікса!
Hi. My name is Felix Gaedtke, and I'm going to speak today about budgeting and financing for immersive projects. I'm happy to be here. Thanks first for the invitation. It's really nice to be able to speak to you and participate here in this virtual forum. I hope you can all hear me because I don't hear you. Okay, good. So as I said today, I'm going to speak about budgeting and finance plan for immersive. I have been working as an immersive producer and director for some years now. I must say I don't claim to be the world's expert in budgeting and financing VR pieces, but we have done that successfully in the past. So I just really want to share what we have been doing and how we have been approaching things. I'm sure there are many different ways in getting your projects off the ground. So maybe I can start with the presentation. I'm from Naohia Media. We're an immersive storytelling studio based in Berlin. We mainly do augmented as well as virtual reality experiences that enable audiences to view contemporary issues through a critical lens. So we mainly work on like documentaries and subjects focusing on human rights, the climate crisis, social justice, and generally see how we have impact. We are an interdisciplinary team, so we have creative technologists, storyteller, artists, producers, depending on the project we engage with. We work with a whole different range of partners and organizations. So we work a lot with media organizations, but also with nonprofits and others, really depending on the project we engage in. Tell me and I will forget, show me and I will remember, involve me and I will understand. I think we have a background in documentary filmmaking, more classical documentary filmmaking and journalism. And what made us really interested in VR or immersive in general is really this idea of involving people and like drawing people into the story. And I think this is what makes it so unique, and that what excites us about the subject. There are 3 things that we find like especially promising when it comes to immersive storytelling, and that is like the feeling of presence, of being somewhere else, of being in someone else's shoes, and therefore the feeling of proximity to be in another place or another person. And by doing so, we really hope to create empathy. Today, I'm going to go into a few projects as examples and how we did financing. And the first one here would be Home After War. I'm just going to show you the trailer. I mean, I've been speaking about this before, but for those who haven't seen it, I just want to play you the trailer. Yeah, so I think for Home After War, we, I'm out of the present. We, let me find the right one here. For Home After War, we worked with a nonprofit as well as with a tech partner in order to create this. So in this case, the financing was quite unique since we managed to work with like a larger NGO that works in the field of clearing IEDs and mines, as well as Oculus. At the time, the Oculus VR for Good program was still existing, and that's how this project came to be. For it, we built a multi-sensory installation that was kind of outside of the budget of the larger experience, and was something that we had to add on later, mainly because we did not foresee at the time, we didn't have the experience how crucial it is to think distribution from the beginning. And so we were very happy to be able to build this installation later, mainly because the NGO supported us in making that happen. And we were able to show it in a bunch of festivals and go around the world and build more installations, since we were unable to move with this one because it was too large. A very different project, and from topic-wise, but also in terms of funding, is the Teen Book India. This is AR, an augmented reality experience, for which we worked with, or we were commissioned by an Indian NGO that works in sexual and reproductive rights and health in India. And they wanted us to kind of hack the school curriculum. And we did that by augmenting different kind of content, different kind of content on the existing school curriculum. So so you basically go with your phone over the app, and this, I mean, here you see the prototype. It's not the final version, but you get some sense of how it works. Here, the financing was, as we said, it was commissioned by the NGO, but they also had to get their financing from their funders. And so we created the prototype. They were able to show that to their funders, and then we got it commissioned later to fully develop the augmented reality app. The project we are currently working on is Kosunda. which is a documentary experience from Nepal, which we developed with an indigenous community in Nepal. Here, the funding was entirely raised by us. So we raised all of the funding from all the different funders and did not have the luxury like we had with Home After War, for example, of having like big NGOs and players behind us right from the start. But to give you a sense, I'm also going to show you the trailer. Yeah, oh, let me just start this again. Yeah, so these are just like a few projects that you should keep in mind while we continue with the presentation, that you know what we are going to. Whoop. No, it's playing again. I'm sorry. So yeah, so what is planned for today? I basically divided the lecture into 3 parts. So one is to create a feasible budget. And then the second, and in some ways the most difficult part, is finding partners. And the third one would be the financing plan. And then we round that up by questions and answers. If you have questions in between, please feel free to raise your hand before you forget later. I'm fine with also answering questions in between. Yeah, so I guess every project starts with a budget, and a budget, the crucial part to develop a budget is really to find out what are the different departments that will be involved from the start. So production, direction, animation, or depending on your need, like photogrammetry, etc. And this may vary from project to project, but it's really crucial to like not forget any department when you start budgeting something, and when you put everything together, and to see where they overlap and who these people are. Here you can see, I don't know if you can see the presentation. Yeah, thank you. Here you can see the different departments we had for Kosunda, where we knew that we would be using photogrammetry, we would be using volumetric capture, animation, VFX. We were working with AI, so with artificial intelligence. We knew that we would have a sound design. We knew that there would be marketing and distribution, equipment rental, the installation, yeah, the actual development, so and the technical art involved, production and coordination. That's a big part as well. Then the production in Nepal, in this case, since we were shooting somewhere else, that was kind of like a separate department. And for us, I mean, that's our approach. Like, story is really at the core of it. So we really want to make sure that story is in the center, and that everyone, yeah, makes sure that this is being cherished. Some of these were overlapping, as you can see, like artificial intelligence and sound design. We knew that we would kind of have like people working on both. Actually, later they separated, but it's good, even if you have the same person doing 3 jobs, it's good to acknowledge them as different jobs, because you often don't know if someone will be there for the whole length of the project, since projects often take years and you never know what's happening in someone else's life. So it's good to really see these departments as separate. This is a quite huge production involving many different partners and so on. And that doesn't mean that every production has to have all these different departments, but I would really encourage you to like spread out your piece and what you want to do, and really see like which departments have I forgot. Because the worst thing you have is that you develop a budget and then you realize, well, we didn't think about marketing and distribution. Then you're being invited to like a really cool festival and you don't have a cent to get there, and you don't have even the budget to edit a trailer. So it's really good to be aware of this from the beginning. So we create a minimum of 2 budgets, normally many more budgets. So one would be like the best case budget, like if all wishes were there, really calculated out. And it also helps to see, to have this large budget really helps to see how much of free work you as a creator end up putting into a project. Because there's like, if you're the creator and you're really behind the project, most of the times, like, you will not be paid the day rate that you put down. So, but you can do that once in the nice to have budget, that you at least have an overview of what you're kind of committing. And the other one would be like the minimum budget that you need to, in order to make the project happen. Whoop. So I want to show you some budget examples. I hope you can see that. Maybe let me make this a bit larger. So this is an example budget. I'm just gonna go over it a bit. For me, like, I always, when I share budgets, I'm always making sure that everything is really discussed before we call it a final budget. Before that, I always would have this asterisk, making sure that this is just an estimate and not everything is going to be there. So just as a general overview, there are the different departments. Then how many units is normally people, but for equipment it might be cameras or something like this. How many people are working on it? Like how many days? What day rate? And what does it come for? Sometimes you work with flat fees as well. That makes it easier to distribute, to calculate for some, for some positions, like a director, I would often do as a flat fee. I have to say these day rates vary a lot depending on whom you work with and where you're working, and and sometimes a high day rate doesn't mean that it's actually more expensive, because people are much faster. So that's something I've learned a lot, like in terms of, especially this development. You can have someone who is less experienced, who is willing to work for less money, who is very enthusiastic, but who just needs much more time than someone who is more experienced and would do it in less time. So in this case, I included the pre-production as part of the production, but that could also be a separate thing altogether, the pre-production. And here, for example, you see that this is a large-scale photogrammetry project, where for the pre-production, we are basically doing a lot of test flights and developing like a kind of scanning vehicle similar to the Google Street View card, or we're trying to build that. So this is like the pre-production in terms of photogrammetry. Then you have directors, producers, audio, and so on. In this case, we also work with a drone pilot, and we have a behind the scenes, and and it goes down to really small things like shooting permits and documents that you need that have like certain costs. Then I try to spread out, like always calculate the equipment. Often some of this equipment we wouldn't rent, but I would still calculate the price it would cost to rent them, even if it's our own equipment, just to have it accounted for in some ways. Yeah, then we have post-production. There are, again, many different departments involved in the post-production of this. It really depends on the relationship you have to the people you work with. If you rather want to deal with flat fees, or if you want to work with day rates. When it comes to things like the development or animation, I would try to go for flat fees, because like there are can be huge costs coming with daily, especially with animation, things like this, because it's so difficult to estimate how much time someone will take on what and what's important at what point. So often it's good to like negotiate a flat fee up front. One point I would also score, emphasize, like, don't forget things like rights to music. You know, you have a cool song, you want to use it, and then make sure that you budgeted that in for. And another big part for us is user testing. I mean, in all the work we do a lot of user testing, which is really nice and helps us a lot to develop the story further. But it requires a lot of time, because normally you have to be there throughout the tests. Then there are 3 people coming, they spend some time before and after, and in the end you spend days doing user testing, which is just time intensive. I mean, it's not like hard work or anything, but it's really time intensive, and therefore should be accounted for. Let's see what else is interesting here. Yeah, I mean, another thing is like bug fixing is a huge part of any development, and just keep some money back. Like, even if you negotiated something with your developer, there will be some bugs where they will say like, okay, this is too much, and this requires extra money, and it's so much nicer to have that money than to then really just be dependent on someone else's goodwill. Not to say that other people's goodwill are not important, they really are, and you need a team that is really wanting to help you and make things come to life. Yeah, so for us, an installation is I just put this here as an example. Budget, that installations are difficult to budget for, because they're very different, and depending on where you build them and how you build them, and also like labor, for example, to set something like this up is really different in costs. We are just for Kosunda planning an installation in New York, and like the prices in New York are very different to the prices in Berlin that you get someone to build something. So yeah, these things are really to put in consideration. Yeah, what do we have here? Here we have like the how many seats. So the build-up is for how many people wearing the headset. So in this case, this is 3 people wearing the headset in this installation, and accordingly we need the equipment. Yeah, distribution and marketing. I mentioned that before. A lot of funders don't want to pay for this, because they feel like, why should I pay for your festival applications? But I would really always try to make them understand that this is crucial, and it really helps to get a project off the ground, especially with immersive projects, because we don't have the equivalent to YouTube, where you can just upload something and it can be spread, but you really need to work for it. And if you have some budgets there for materials and applications, and especially festival applications can be expensive. Can speak about this later again, but I think with festival applications, I would recommend you to always ask for a voucher, write them beforehand, try to find out who the curator is, write them personally, say like, hey, we are like an independent studio trying to do some cool project, like we really don't have the budget. And often they waive it, not all the time, obviously, but often. So I would also be strategic about how many of paid applications you do. Because I feel a lot of festivals, unfortunately, are using this as a way to make money. And and it doesn't, and you still often get invited even if you didn't, you didn't apply. And once you're normally in a big festival, then the smaller festivals will also approach you and wanting to show your content, even if you didn't, if you didn't apply and didn't pay the fee. Very important is like these miscellaneous, like legal assistance and accounting. You will have to set up a bunch of contracts. Lawyers are crazy expensive. This is actually probably even a bit low, because I mean, lawyers are really expensive. If you want to go over contracts with a lawyer, if there's any complication, this is something to take care of, and the same goes for accounting. I don't know, that obviously depends on the kind of funding you get. And if it's state funding, for example, there's a lot more accounting involved in doing something. Whoa. So, and last but not least, I think it's important to have a budget for insurance. We normally have it between 3 and 4% for insurances. Contingency, which you will always need, because especially in larger budgets, it's impossible to like bring everything down to the euro. So you need some kind of wiggle room, and an overhead. Well, an overhead is basically to pay the rent of your studio, pay the printer material, make sure that your bicycle has air in the tires, all of this. So I would try to get an overhead in. Often, like, film funds don't want to fund an overhead, because the idea is somehow that you work in an empty space and don't need any room to work in. You can try to hide it in the costs, or lower it, but I would still think in terms of an overhead, I do think it's an important thing, because you do have running costs with a lot of people, and like I don't know, you pay for your internet, you pay for your computer, for your phone, and so on, and these kind of costs need to be covered from somewhere. Good. So now we have this big budget. This is like 260,000. Let's say someone says like the absolute max we could go for would be 200. Yeah. Now just use the same budget to make things smaller. So in this case, I knew that the photogrammetry drone pilot is something that's really nice to have, but it's also expensive. So we can kick that out, and by doing that, we lower the days generally that we are there. Behind the scenes is really nice to have. It's really nice to have a camera person doing that, but sometimes it's also enough if you film with your phones while this is going on. Then can like reduce the amount of cameras that we have in there. And then when it comes to like animation, I think there's always a way to make cheaper animations. They might not look as good, and it's more like negotiating with your animator and how much time, but and how much time they got. But you can find a way to make it work also in less. And the same then goes for the development. And I think then it's really about speaking in detail about the script and about what you want to do. And if there are ways to make your project less complex from a development point of perspective, so that there's just less work for a developer. In this case, I also reduced the user testing and the whole installation, made that cheaper than the whole distribution. Obviously, you can get a website for 3,000 and you can get a website for 800 euros. And I think these are places where it's relatively easy to shorten some money before I would like kick out things entirely. I did kick out the behind the scenes entirely, because I don't think that's like crucial. I think a trailer, for example, is much more important than a behind the scenes. And lowered the marketing materials as well as festival applications significantly. And now we're at under 200,000. I mean, this is still, and I also reduced the overhead here. So I think that's something that can be reduced. This is just one example. Not all, I understand that not all budgets are this big. They're smaller budget, but the logic applies to all of them. So let me go on here. I think once you have your budget and once you have your budgets, plural, the next step is really to find partners, and you kind of do it in parallel because often partners are also people who work on the project. So yeah, the first one would be really to create a pitch deck or concept note. Pitch decks are more common when it comes to immersive projects than concept notes, but that doesn't mean that there would be not someone who would maybe want a concept note. Now there's a really good, I wanted to go on the link here. There's a good guideline by Artisan on how to develop pitch decks. So Artisan is a platform, I'm going to speak about them later as well, that funds different artist explorations and projects or like tries to get funding for them. So I think the first advice is really crucial. Keep it short. Really think about your audience. No one wants to go over 50 slides of like details, a lot of text. Like if it's something that looks appealing, that has short text, and where you understand the story and like right away, I think that helps a lot. So you have a title page where you start with like the project title and the log line and like a hero image. So you can also work with stock images if you don't have a visualization yet that suits you, but you have a look you like of something else, and so to work with that. Yeah, I think then you need to describe what inspired you. Like are you seeing this as part of like some legacy? Then the actual experience. What is the story? What is the gameplay? What will people experience? Often people forget that not everyone is as involved in the project as you are. So I think it's really good to explain it simple and try to explain it to someone who doesn't understand VR, who doesn't maybe fully understand what you're doing. So you can also test that. Go to your aunt who doesn't know anything about VR and show them your pitch deck and see if they understand what you plan to do. So I think these kind of things really help. Yeah, what makes your project special? I think that you really have to make stand out, because they're funders. There are not that many people who fund VR projects, so they also get a lot of like funding requests and proposals. So I think it's it just really helps to be clear what's like special about this project and what's special about the story, and why are you the person to tell it. So I think there might be some projects for which you're better suited to tell than me, for example. If you have a trailer, link it there. I think that's great. And if you have a trailer that conveys some kind of look and feel of the project, even if it's super simple, I think that can help. Then it's good to make sure that people understand where you are in the project, how much more is to go. Are you like in pre-production, or are you just looking for development funds? Highlight the things you have already done, like what you have achieved. Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer, but like people are really into name dropping. So if you can like have some like organizations and stuff like this that you can name, that really helps to show that you already have good partnerships. And then it's also good to understand who you are, who your team is, who are these people, and yeah, what can they do? And finally, what are you even asking for? Like, are you looking for money? Are you looking for co-producers? How much have you raised? What do you need? And so on. I think that's that's a good example. I want to show you now a pitch deck that we did recently for the installation of Kosunda. It's a little bit specific because it's for an installation, for VR installation, so not for the actual experience, but for setting up the installation, but it will give you some idea already. So we have like the title image, then a short log line of what the project is about, a synopsis for those who want to read it. So it's always good to have something short and then something a bit longer if someone really wants to read a bit more. Then why we think this is like a relevant story and why we should do this. Yeah, this is a bit specific to this project. I don't think you always have to do this, but this is kind of our motivation and how we started with the project. And then we get to the actual installation, a short description of how we see the installation, what we think is important here, which is really to bridge this real life and virtual experience. And then we have a user journey, like what are the different parts that we see? So user journey part 1, part 2, part 3. And then we have, in this case, it's quite technical, like we have a layout of where what is and how we see that working, like some little drawings. Often, I mean, this is not a very fancy drawing, but I think it really helps understand of what you're planning to do. So often it's like really a simple sketch that can already help. Then we have a lot of like reference images here of like the materials we want to use. And that, I mean, that's now installation specific, but for VR experience, in a similar way, you can say you want to use, I don't know, photogrammetry, and these are the kind of images that we are looking for. Yeah, so this is, for example, something which we would really like to do, but we don't know if we have the budget for it. So we put a nice looking image in there of like projection mapping, hoping that someone will be so, yeah, caught by this image that he or she wants to help us to make this come to life. Yeah, then some additional elements that we work with in this, like an equipment list. I don't think you need this for everything, but like in this case for the installation, it's important so that the venues can see how expensive certain computers and so on are, if they maybe have it, if they have access to it, and they don't have to rent it from someone else. Okay, so let me go back here. So yeah, once you have this pitch deck, I think that's really the core of it, and you will update it throughout the project. And there's new partners coming on board, there will be like new elements to the pitch deck. So just be open to change that and adapt it according to your needs. Another really nice thing to have, but it depends on your budget before you actually start out, is a prototype. Because often it really, really helps to show something in headset already. Here, we do prototypes really, really early. And there is also a downside to this, because sometimes the prototype you do really early on, they don't look very good. So if you have a funder who's not experienced with VR and doesn't have the fantasy to imagine how something might look like completed and done and beautiful, they might be put off by like some bumpy looking prototype. So it's the way how you present that. If you go there and you show the prototype, but you also have all these other images where you can say like, but this is the kind of look we're going to go for, and this is how it's going to look. I think that is really helpful. Because then a lot of people don't know, haven't done much VR, don't understand the differences between 6DoF and 3DoF and so on. So it's always good to show something, especially pitching for a VR project, if you want to work with partners, yeah, who are not that experienced with VR. So if you can get a prototype. So the first starting point for looking for funding in our case is like regional state funding. So that can be different in different places. So for us, it's really film funds and interactive funds that, and I mean, Germany is a federal country, so it's up to the federal states, but it depends on the place you're in. So film funds, cultural funds, but also innovation funds. Often there are these weird pots of money for kind of like innovation around, where people themselves don't even know what they're exactly supposed to do what they're exactly supposed to do with it. So this is really the starting point. One thing to these film funds and also interactive or culture, these regional state funds, is often they want you to spend the money in the region, and often they want you to spend more money in the region than what they give you. So they might give you 100 euros, but they want you to spend 150 euros here. So this is something to also accommodate for in your budget. So sometimes we have an extra column where we then say like so and so many percent of that is like spent here and there. So that is also something to put in consideration by putting a team together. So if you have a great developer outside of your region, sometimes it might be just not possible to fund it. Sometimes you just need to be creative and find some ways around it. But yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. Most of these funds are loans. They're not money they give you as a present. They do want that back in theory. Since they're built of the idea of like film funds, where you have a classical cinema distribution, they normally get like, for some percentage of their films, they actually get the money back. For VR projects, it's very difficult to make that money back, and they know that. That doesn't mean that they will still say it's a loan, but they know it's very unlikely that they will get the whole amount back. That's also something to keep in mind when generally doing these budgets, that there needs to be like some kind of revenue share model afterwards. So if there's kind of revenue coming out of it, like who's being paid first? So in our case, for example, the regional funder, they want to be the first ones to get money back if there's money coming into the project. So that's something to look in the contracts you have with people, because they might be contradicting, because obviously everyone wants to be the first person who gets money back. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Generally in these institutions, it can really help to develop some kind of personal relationships with the people who work there. And like maybe meet them once for a coffee, see what they're interested in. And often that really helps to tailor your project, even if it's just some wording here and there to like fit better into what they're looking for. Or sometimes they then also know like, hey, this is like, we have this funding opportunity for this, and they would work really well for this, and they might even contact you. Yeah, their support is normally what you need to get first before you can look for other co-producers, because a lot of like, I don't know, if I would have a project, we would be co-producing with someone else and the regional fund wouldn't have said yes, then our regional fund will not say yes, because they would first say like, hey, why don't you make sure that it's funded in your region before you go and involve co-producers there. So another option for funding are like international funds and grants for VR. There are different kinds of calls out there. So for example, I just want to share this. I think it's already over, but it's a residency by the VR Ham, so the Virtual Reality Festival in Hamburg, where they're looking for different artists and creators to explore possibilities with 3D scanning technologies. And as far as I understand, this is more done as a residency, but these kind of residencies can really help you to have the right connections and also get some funding, because they're often an indirect way to get funding. In this case, you get like production and prototype costs up to 10,000 euros, which is fantastic to develop a very nice prototype. Then another one I wanted to share is the ITFA Dog Lab call. Yeah, these are also different film festivals that sometimes offer these, where they ask for development proposals. So you can come with an early pitch deck and say like, here, I would really like to develop this project and jump into this. And yeah, so you get some funding for the project. Often there are also these story incubators that happen as part of festivals, where you are, you're also developing the concept and the story as part of some larger workshops. So there are several of those. And I think they can be very helpful in making connections and also in like making your project better. Like ultimately, if you have more people with experience around, they can really help you like to make a project better. And I guess that's what you all want. There are subject-specific funders. So if you work on, I don't know, Alzheimer's disease, there might be NGOs that work with Alzheimer's. There might be also foundations that fund these NGOs that have someone rich behind them who's really, really into supporting the research and knowledge on Alzheimer's disease, for example. And then if you can approach these people, like do it and really think wide. I think there might be like the weirdest coincidences when it comes to your project and why it's relevant to some subject-specific funder. The cool thing there is that this is the moment where you can really play out virtual reality, because often these people are not people who are used to virtual reality or immersive technologies. And if you can go there with a cool project and show them something already, either be it a prototype or a project you did before, that really helps. What it does require is like really personal relationships. Meet people, go there, call them. I think with the pandemic, one of the good things that it's easier to get Zoom calls with people, so do that. If you can demo stuff, I think that really, really helps. One big thing is for us also is welcome in-kind support. There are small and big kinds of support that people do just like this. And they often do it because they want to support your project. They might also do it, or it might be a combination out of the two, because they want to feel part of a project like this. And I think you can easily set incentives by making sure that people feel part of the project, like be generous when it comes to credits and so on, that people feel included and feel part of a project and might do some work for free. And I think when it comes to, I don't know, there are VFX specialists who maybe make a lot of money doing advertisement, and for your small project, the day rate you offer them is anyway like too low in what they would do normally, but they might do it because they're interested in the project and they're interested to do something else than just car commercials. So if you can find these kind of people that do like kind of in-kind support, like really cherish this, and I think they're don't overdo it as well, but like I think it's really something good to keep in mind. And it can be also equipment, for example. It can be access to studios and so on. So it can be a lot of different things how this like in-kind support can happen. So there are different forms of crowdfunding that you can engage with. One would be something more classical like Kickstarter, but like I just want to mention Artisan here because we also worked with them before, and it's really different grants from artists that are funded and created by the community. So they are normally subject specific. So you might have one on like Black realities or a social impact grant, and I think for these kind of things, it's not only about the money, because the money is great, but like these grants are also not like gonna fund your whole project, but it's also about visibility and like maybe finding other partners that you want to work with, be it in a co-production or some other form. So yeah, I think Artisan is definitely something worth checking out. So another form of partners that we have been working with successfully and that can really help are like these research institutions, be it in universities or schools or any kind of research institute. there are a lot of people doing research on VR and like starting this, and are excited to partner up with actual projects. And what that can really help with is give your project legitimacy. So if you have like a big university involved, there might be other funders who take you much more serious. Just because you have some university involved, and it makes it sound more legit. But also they have networks of their own. So they might know someone at a museum, they might know someone, who can help you in some other form. We, for example, had now a collaboration with the university that was really, really helpful. So for Kosunda, we wanted to always edit a 2D film as well, to be able to distribute it wider among the target audience in Nepal, because not everyone there has access to a VR headset. So we knew that we wanted to do this 2D film, but we really didn't know how to finance it. And now this university in Cambridge is doing research where they compare the perception of virtual reality to the perception of 2D film. So the deal we had now with them is that we have some budget to edit like a 2D film, very similar to the VR experience, so that they can do research with that. But through that, we also have our 2D film that we wanted anyway, and are able to show that to the community there. So it's really this like mutual beneficial connections that can be helpful. The next one would be nonprofits. So NGOs are a great partner when it comes to VR. They do great impact stories. They're really interested in this. I think the difficulty is this balance between them wanting you to do an NGO film and you wanting to do an art piece. And I think the idea there is to really convince them that a real art piece for them is also more beneficial than an NGO film. Like if you do some super classical NGO film where you interview the people from the NGO doing something, that won't be shown at some big film festival. If you do something on like a subject that is relevant to the NGO, where maybe the NGO is just like visible in one sentence at the end, that might be still something that can be shown at a film festival and reach a much larger audience than these very classical NGO films, so to say. So try to find an insider within the NGO who understands this importance and who is helping you internally, because there will be so many different people, depending on the size, speaking that, that it's really good to have an insider, and then create some kind of co-creation workflow with them, where you say like, hey, we want to develop something together with you, but it should be really like a story that stands on itself, and it might overlap with the subject that you're working on, but we are not doing like a classical NGO film. I think that would be my advice when it comes to working with NGOs. A good place to find all kinds of partners are film markets. So all big and small film festivals have these markets, and you can pitch there, you can present your project there. I've done it a lot, so I think you can also overdo it, because it's exhausting, it takes time, it takes resources and money. So don't underestimate how much it costs to just be at a film festival, just because you won't be able to have your cheap lunch because you're just around the corner and there's just this one place where you can eat. So these small things add up, and it's something to put into consideration. So I would say, yes, go and attend film markets, but be selective. Because often also they're the same people there over and over again. So you might pitch to the same people in Festival A that is also going to hang out in Festival B. That can be good as well, because sometimes these, especially curators or funders, they want to see you a few times before they like want to speak with you or like take you serious. So it can be a good thing, but like, yeah, just be wary that it can take a lot of effort and time. And so I would try to be selective with those. Another opportunity to fund things are really tech partners. So that might be things like Oculus Studio or Steam. But yeah, I wanted to mention two things here. One is Unity for Humanity. So they have this whole call where they support. They often also, again, speaking about in-kind support, what they also helped us, for example, with was like just when we had questions in terms of development, they would hook up us up right with the right people at Unity, and that also really, really helped. But they also do have some funding opportunities, even if it's limited. Another big one here is Unreal, the Epic Mega Grants, where they are mainly interested in games, but that doesn't mean that you can't apply with something else. The competition is stiff, and but yeah, I would definitely also look into this if it makes sense for your project and you're planning to work with Unreal, because I think they do have quite a lot of money at Unreal, and just because games bring generally more money, so sometimes it's also about like yeah, tapping into this game world. So another way to finance your project are co-productions. So in a co-production, a classical co-production, I don't know, you do the main production of a project in Ukraine, and then you want to do a co-production with us here in Germany, and we would then take over one specific department, just like, for example, the sound, and then we could apply for funding for the sound part in our host region, and therefore that part could be financed through someone else. When it comes to co-productions, I think first be sure that you want to work with the people that you co-produce with. I think there's a lot of like personal going back and forth. Be sure these are people you like and you want to work with, and people who you also find like reliable in terms of their working. So because a lot of things can go wrong, and like there's nothing worse than having to finish a project over 2 years with someone whom you don't like. So like be sure to surround yourself with people you like and whom you want to work with. Ask for recommendations of other people who have worked with them before, before you engage on like a crazy co-production with someone. Go and see, oh, did they work with someone else? Let me just write an email to them and see like, hey, well, was it okay with you working with them? Is that something you would do again? Have very clear contracts beforehand, because often there will be misunderstandings. Everyone always hears what they want to hear. I think that's just human nature. We all try to make reality fit our own perceptions. So yeah, I think it's good to have very clear contracts before to not have any misunderstandings. And what they often involve also are these territorial rights. So let's say you do a co-production with someone in the US, and then they might want to have the territory right to North America as part of that. So that's pretty classic that you have like in co-productions, that you also then split the rights in terms of the distribution of the project. I think when it comes to co-productions, it's also important to have clear departments. I think it's difficult to do a co-production with overlapping departments. So it's better to have like a whole department in one being dealt with one part. Yeah, don't underestimate the work. It's a lot of work of back and forth and being with everyone on the same page, and often there are time differences and so on. So this is something like I wouldn't underestimate. But I would still encourage you to do it, because I think it's also a good way to learn from each other. That there's like, you get good feedback on stuff you do and so on. So yeah, that's on co-productions. Yeah, I think another partner would be museums or galleries. That can be museums that are relevant for your specific topic, or galleries are generally like museums and galleries are generally a great partner for location-based VR. I think what you need to keep in mind there is that they often plan years ahead. So try to get in touch with them early, and make sure that they also understand the time it takes and like from their end to take care of a VR installation. Often they just assume it's like a film where you have to press play and not that there needs to be someone standing there and putting people in and outside of a headset. You can do a revenue share with them. They can pay a flat fee that really depends on the museum and on the situation. Or maybe they just return something completely else in return. I wanted to give a short example here for Marshmallow Laser Feast. They, just show this. So Marshmallow Laser Feast did a really cool experience at the Saatchi Gallery in London, where they charged 20 euros roughly a ticket. And I recently spoke to their producer, and they made some money back, but it did not finance all their work going in there, because I mean, it's a very complex work, but still there was some revenue. Just like, don't overestimate the amount of money you make back in these things. Also because, yeah, not everyone has access to like the most fancy gallery in the center of London. Yeah. Whoop. So another interesting thing are VR venues. Most of them focus on game content, but we have made the experience that, for example, in China, because they have these big VR venues, that they're also interested in narrative content there. And that's definitely worth something exploring. What can help with distribution is to work for a distribution with like a distribution partner. For example, there's Diversion Cinema, which is a company that focuses on the distribution of immersive projects. So they can help you also find these kind of venues where you are able to get some more revenues. Then there are the classical VR stores. So be it Oculus, Viveport, Steam, PlayStation, and so on. Normally they work with a revenue share model where they keep 30% and you get 70%. First, I think especially Oculus is really difficult to get into. So that it's not only that your project needs to be great, but you also need to know the right people there and like be sure that you're accepted in the store. There's a lot of like the project needs to be technically on a very high level to be accepted and so on. And the other thing is, if you're not like the favorite project of Viveport, Steam, Oculus, PlayStation, whatever, and then you're not featured on the first page, which makes a big difference. So you will still have to like create some kind of audience around your project. Yeah, just keep that in mind. While there are other for-profit companies, we don't have much experience with that, but there might be like a company that wants to be featured in your project, and in a similar way how you have product placement in films, you can also do that in VR experience. Yeah, I don't know, if you do an experience about food, maybe there wants to be a pasta manufacturer wants to be involved. So there are some of these things I would definitely also consider if it makes sense for your individual project. I'm just hurrying up a bit. So once you have all the partners locked down, it's really good to do like a map with all the partners. So what you see here are all the different, this is now for Kosunda, we made this, all the different funders and stakeholders, like what are they? Like they're the different film funders and co-production partners and press, museums, film festivals, like then our community in Nepal, which is also different. And then if you zoom in here, you see like, what do they want? Like, what are the things people are looking for? Like, what are their needs? Like, we know that the Medium Board, they really would like, obviously, some festival premieres and some awards because they want to show that this is a successful project. For them, a bonus would be to get money, but it's not their main thing. Yeah. Are there constraints regarding the format and so on? So in that sense, we map out all the different stakeholders in something which are very different. Like, I don't know, the community in Nepal needs very different things than the different co-production partners. So it's really good to have like a map like this that allows you to understand like whom you want to reach and how you want to reach them and how they're all connected. Good. So I think I have to hurry up a bit. Yeah, the third point, important point, is really a financing plan. Once you have all the partners on board, you have a financing plan. Let me make this a little bit bigger, where you see who are the different bodies that give money, and or it doesn't always have to be money, but like value to the project. So in this case, for example, there's a motion capture studio involved that offers for free the studio that is worth a lot of money, in this case 100,000 euros, but these 100,000 euros never move from any bank account to any other bank account. It's really an in-kind contribution. And in that way, you have like all the different partners involved. On the financing plan, you see which parts are not confirmed and how much more you need. So this is also something you can do early together with the, with the budget to, to make that happen. Okay. Yeah, I think ultimately, I just want to say that all projects are different. Like none of the fundings that we got were like the straightforward same way. So really like find your own way in this and like try to like be open to changes and be open to try things out and repackage it a little bit if it needs to, but still try to be yourself and be true to your project ultimately. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And yeah, you can also reach out to me via email. I hope this helped you to get a better understanding of like financing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We have some questions here in chat.
Mm-hmm.
And the first. How do you calculate the work of 3D artist and Unity developer for Animator and by days or by hour or all work?
So yeah, I think that's a good question. I would try to like make a flat deal with an animator based on like some idea of how many days it takes. I think by the hour that will get a little bit too crazy in the end, because there will be some small things here and there and it might get really expensive really fast, and then it's difficult to know how big the project entirely will be. So if you can negotiate a flat deal and say like, can we do it in this, and like, so that also the burden of knowing, like, I'm assuming that you're not like an experienced 3D animator if you ask this question. So you also don't know exactly how much time what takes in an animation process. So I think the burden of calculating how much time that takes, you can also push a little bit on the animator and say like, look, like, can we do the project in that style in this budget? And if you then, as I said before, if you have some kind of like like budget calculated in case some contingency budget, now I have the word, calculated in, then you can later say like, okay, good, I see that this took more work than we initially thought it was, and therefore I'm happy to pay X, Y more. So I think that's important. Yeah, I think this is what I would recommend to do. But sometimes like an animators say they want to work by the day. We have, and as I said before, it also really depends on the skill set of the person, because like I've been working with different developers, for example, and some of them like charge like double of what the other would charge, but are like 4 times faster, you know. So then it's still much cheaper, but you don't know that beforehand. So you kind of like need to try things out.
Are you working with freelancer or companies? Yes.
Both, but yeah, I mean, we have our own network of freelancers we work with a lot. So normally we work with them, but sometimes we also work with companies.
Yeah, we have a question about your education background.
Oh, okay. I studied journalism. Yeah, I did a more or less classical TV journalism education, political science and TV journalism. So not much to do with what I'm doing now. I have some. Yeah, I also did some trainings in documentary filmmaking, but that's many years ago.
Maybe you have some experience with funding with game companies, Unreal or what kind of documents they want?
It depends. So we got some support from Unity before, and that was relatively uncomplicated. We met someone from Unity at a film festival, and then yeah, started speaking. She was interested in the project we were doing, and then I mean, I think all of them would want to see like a pitch deck and what you add, ideally a prototype, it's similar to all the other funders, and then yeah, we got some financial and in-kind support from them.
Prototype is first version of experience, or what you mean?
Yes, so a prototype can be many different things, but like, so we often, like we have many levels of prototype. The first prototype we might do is actually with Lego, and we film it with a camera that you understand like spatially where's what, and you have these little Lego figures, and then you have that. That's like just a film. Then ideally you would want to develop some in-headset prototype early on, where you, yeah, it doesn't need to be polished. There needs to be no great animation. Even if you say like, I don't know, let's say in your scene, there is, in your documentary, there is a horse running from over there to over there. We don't need an actual horse running. We can just have a block that moves, and then you get a feeling for, okay, there's something of size moving from there to there. You might not need like the character yet speaking to you. It might be just like a figure out of an asset store that you get for free, to which you attach the sound that you record on your phone, and you put that in there. But what you get with that is you already have a feeling for your experience and what's going on there.
What is the best way to look for funding, by scene or by type of work?
By what? Excuse me?
By scene or by type of work? Steps. Photogrammetry, for example, or 3D animation type of work, or scene or in film. When you
no, I would do it by type of work. I mean, for funding, you mean? Like, yeah. I mean, a funder normally wants to be like, I mean, unless it's a co-production, often they want to be involved in the whole project. But yeah, but for a co-production, for example, then you would do it for type of work. Then you would say like, hey, I don't know, the animations can be done from this animation studio there. They do great animation work, and they can get the funding for the animation done in XY place, or yeah. So I think for co-productions that would be that. But yeah, as I said before, I don't think there's like one way to get these projects funded. I think there are many different ways, and it depends. But if you have a more like specific project in mind, maybe that would be easier to answer then.
How many co-production your studio have for now? How do you think?
I don't know. We did several co-productions, but like, I think on an individual project, you also don't want to overdo the amount of co-productions. It can be very complex and complicated, and legally also very complicated. If you then have lawyers in 3 different countries and you want to create some contract, it's a little bit of a nightmare. So I've been there, that's why I'm saying it. So I think, yeah, do co-productions, but like be sure what you want to do in a co-production, what you don't want to do in a co-production, with whom you do them. Yeah, because it does take time.
Now we developing our VR film, but we shooting a documentary film, and we have a teaser of documentary film. Can we apply this teaser to funding or no?
For VR funding?
Teaser, not VR.
Yeah, no, I'm like, if you have any kind of visual material that is like on the same subject or shot in the same location, if it's 2D, that's fantastic. Use that. And I would almost, I mean, these kind of like combinations with like a traditional film can be also really fruitful, also because for them, the VR experience could be part of their marketing budget. You know, you can go to the film thing and can say like, hey, you want to show at a film festival, why don't we also show VR experience there? That could be, or in the cinema, and you can have the VR there. I think that can be part of their marketing budget. There might be even a way to funnel some film funding into a VR project.
What are you doing with the materials that still with you after VR?
That are what?
About distribution?
No. When you doing VR experience, you have many materials. Mm-hmm. What are you doing with them after?
Oh, other materials. Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, if you can use them in some way, that's fantastic. So I think what I would keep always materials back for is like social media stuff, because everyone who does social media will be super happy if you give them more material. I think sometimes you are able to even develop some small other behind the scenes film out of it or something like this. And yeah, it might be also useful for your trailer, for example.
I understand that you are recommended to do backstage, like
behind the scenes.
Yeah. Financing plan.
Make financing plan for backstage. Yeah.
For the behind the scenes.
Yes.
I think, I mean, you can have it in your not for the financing plan. I think I would have it in the budget. I would have the behind the scenes if I'm planning to do one, because it's not a must. I think this is one thing that would be easily kicked out of a project, because I mean, today with the phone, you can also film some behind the scenes. And if you edit it in a day, it's also something. It's not going to be as good as if you have someone actually there for this, but yeah. These behind the scenes can be helpful for some funders because they want to see what you did with the money, and often it's difficult for them to understand. And if you have some behind the scenes video they can show, and they can show to their boss, that really helps them understand where the money has gone.
Thank you. Yeah.
In Ukraine, we haven't a sound studio for sound for VR film.
Mm-hmm.
How you work with sound studio? It's a usual sound studio or special sound studio for VR?
It depends. I mean, it's nice to have someone that has experience with specializing sound. So I think like someone who's specialized in this is great. So if you can find a sound person who has experience in specializing it, you can do that. But having said that, I also work with sound studios who have zero experience in VR, and they were really eager to learn it. I think then it more comes down to the budget, because they need to understand if they don't know, you're not going to pay for them learning the new skill, but like that's something they will then have to do.
Yeah, we have a question from Shelter. Sorry.
Hi, Felix.
Hi, Piotr, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Nice to see you. Thank you for detailed and interesting lecture presentation. I last part I can't. I have another call. Maybe you cover this, then I would watch it later. But if you didn't talk about COVID and VR, then I have a question. Don't you
No,
cover?
I didn't. Yeah, no, I didn't speak about COVID.
Because before it was a presentation from I forgot the name, but from BBC, and you already mentioned that BBC now stop because of COVID, because of lack of headsets for majority of the viewers. They stop VR production now. And what's your experience? How COVID changed the interest from people who have grants and interest and museums? Because it seems there's a problem, you need to sanitize it and some other stuff.
Sorry, it's about not production, but about research. Okay, but what do you think about?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question, and I mean, I feel like so some museums and festivals we work with, they have not done any VR things right now, and they have like put that on hold for now. And I hope that it's like temporary, that in a year from now that issue won't be there anymore, and there will be hunger for new content. That's my hope, and that there are ways to disinfect. I mean, there are already ways to disinfect headset and make that sure, but of course it has some impact for now, as for every industry. I got the feeling that in the VR industry, there are like always kind of new players coming on and old players leaving to some extent. So I don't know exactly what happened with the BBC, but I know, for example, that at one point Google had given a lot of money to different news outlets to do immersive productions. And they didn't want to put in their own money, so they took Google's money. And once that Google money ran out, they all closed their VR departments. Yeah, I think that's just a matter of being patient. I mean, funding VR is difficult, and I don't know if like how long it will take before there will be like a bigger market for it. But I mean, having said that, like funding films is also difficult, and so I think COVID does both. It also does. There are also people who want to do things immersively because they can't do it in real. So it kind of goes in both directions. Yeah, but I mean, I can't really help you with the uncertainty there. I think that's just something we have to learn how to live with.
Yeah, sure. And another aspect I thought now, do you have any experience or insights from selling like this local store? Yeah, if it's could earn some reliable money, or it's also just a
so I think
presence.
Yeah, selling things in stores is definitely possible. There's a lot of money in games. There's much less money in like documentaries. So I think it's a tough one. I don't have much experience with it, to be very honest, like how much you can budget documentaries for in a store. I think it's also something one needs to try out and see how big is the audience. It also depends on the kind of documentary you have, because there might be niche documentaries that have an audience that is interesting in whatever that person does. So I don't know if you know, there's this historian called Dan Carlin, and there was a VR experience about what his work on the First World War, and he has like a huge fan base in the US. They listen to all his podcasts, they buy all his books, and they're also going to buy his VR thing if they can. So if you have like some kind of like project like that, you know, where you have someone attached where people will spend money, or I don't know, if you do some documentary on the NBA or something like this, I'm sure you can make money with it. But if that applies to like it really depends on the subject you're working on.
Okay, thank you.
Hope COVID is not forever, yeah.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Okay, I think we have no question.
No more questions?
Yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah, so I hope this helped you get some understanding of how we do things. As I said, I think there are many different ways, and I'm also not like a financing expert. I'm just speaking from our experience, and yeah, I hope it helped you.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Very great. Okay.
So have a nice day, and yeah, speak to you soon.
Yeah, nice. Goodbye, Felix.
Goodbye.
Bye.